the beloved and at the same time, the hated London system. The London system, the one you're seeing right now on the board, has become one of the favorite setups for many players. Why? Because of its simplicity and effectiveness. Notice that white, no matter what black does, is always going to play the same setup. And it's also very hated, especially by people who play with black and have the London system played against them. Why? Well, for that very reason, because it's very hard to bypass and very hard to break down. In this video, I'm going to show you all the secrets and many little tricks we have in the London system and how to use it with the black pieces. White, sorry, and how to defend ourselves with the black pieces. Let's set up the London system in its usual order with the pieces on the board. Notice that we'll start with the move d4. It's a queen's pawn opening. Now, I'm going to do a very quick introduction for those who don't know the laundress system. London, d4, d5, knight f3, knight f6. Here they'll play the little bishop over here. It can also be done in a different way. Otherwise, here bishop f5 and then knight f3. It would be the same thing, e6, e3, and here, for example, a very common move for black is bishop d6. As you can see, here white wants to play more or less this structure to stay with a super solid structure, castle, and not have any problems. Here, when they play bishop d6 against us, we already have several ideas. One, the first would be to capture, the other to retreat the bishop. Leaving it here doesn't seem like a good idea. Why? Because after the exchanges, notice that here we're left with a bit of a bad structure. Therefore, we're going to try to avoid that exchange. I'm going to propose a super interesting move to you, which is knight e5. You're going to love this move, I'm telling you. Notice that now exchanging here would be a pretty bad idea because they're giving us the bishop pair. Therefore, we'd be very happy. Notice that now a move is typical as c5, breaking in the center, a super common move. You know it has to be done no matter what in all positions against a queen's pawn, would already seem to be a pretty serious mistake, because we could take advantage of it by coming to give a check over here. Notice that now we've weakened all these squares, and the knight is here to take advantage of them. Notice that a move as simple as the defense, bishop d7, would already leave us with a totally winning position. And you'll ask me why. Well, look, because after knight takes bishop, the bishop on d7, this bishop on d6 is left totally unprotected. Notice that this knight cannot be recaptured with the queen, since we have the bishop here defending. It has to be captured with one of the two knights, and now we'd be left with this bishop totally loose. Let's look at another option that could happen here. After capturing this bishop, knight takes d7, as we've seen. If instead of taking this knight, they took this bishop, the thing is, we still win a piece anyway. For example, with this move, knight takes f6, check. Notice we're giving a check, so they have to deal with the threat. Plus, it's a double check. Check with the bishop and check with the knight. Therefore, they can't just take the knight, they have to move the king. Look. And now, simply, for example, we could take the bishop, and after the knight is taken, we'd end up, as we can see, with a full piece advantage. And besides, the castling, we've taken that away from the enemy. Let's go back to the position where we played knight e5. Notice we saw that playing c5 here was a pretty serious problem, because it left its diagonal open, giving a check to the king. So a better idea here would be to castle. Once black castles, we'll start to set up our attacking idea. Bishop d3. Why? Because here we're aiming at the enemy's castle position. Notice we have both bishops aiming, the knight over here, this queen that could come out at some point. So we have a pretty good position. By playing bishop d3, and with black castled, now they actually can strike at the center, since that check no longer exists. As you can see, now they're threatening to trap this bishop and remove it from the diagonal. Therefore, the logical move you have to make here is c3. Notice we're left with a very good pawn center, a super solid structure. This knight will be able to come out, and we have all the pieces very well placed. Notice that by playing c3, now when they play c4, there's no problem at all in retreating the bishop to c2. It's doing the same job here as it was there, which is aiming at the castling point, so it's not a problem for us. Remember, when they play c5 and they haven't castled yet, obviously we'll play this way. But if they have castled, we'll give the bishop a path. When they try to trap it, we'll keep it on the same diagonal. Notice that now black is already having a problem. And you'll ask me, a problem? Why? Well, the problem lies with this knight right here. Notice that now, if they try to bring the knight out here, after a very simple exchange, they'd be left with some pretty bad doubled pawns on the queen side. Therefore, it's better to bring the knight out to d7. Also, bringing the knight out here would be a problem since they couldn't move this pawn to bring out the bishop, because this knight would be left undefended at all times. So, as I said, it's better to bring the knight out to d7. But that's not better either. And I'll tell you why. Because here we can already punish them with a spectacular trap. It's a fairly simple trap, but as you can see, we take advantage of having the knight here, we take this pawn. Discovered attack. With this knight, we attack the queen and attack the bishop, so they have to take it no matter what. They have no choice. And we simply take this bishop, and we're left with an extra pawn. Not only are we up a pawn, but we also have the bishop pair and a completely winning position. Let's see how we can launch a strong attack with this London system. d4, d5. Here we could use, as I've said, knight through 3 or bishop f5 to 4. I recommend playing bishop f4 first. After the opponent's knight comes out, I recommend playing e3 first. This is the move order that works best for me. Why? Because now, for example, after the move e6, we could continue with knight f3 and absolutely nothing would happen. And if we played knight to f3 first, they could pin this knight, and it might be a bit annoying now when we play e3 to have this knight pinned. We could keep playing without any problem. Now, if we play e3, we avoid this pin and we're happier. e6. Now, as we said, knight f3, and this bishop could come out in two places at once. Earlier, we said it could go through d6, but it could also come out through e7, an equally powerful square. We've analyzed what happened when there was bishop d6. We saw that we'd play this move, but when they played bishop e7, which is also a completely logical move, and one I even like better, we're going to stick with our usual plan, bishop d3, because we have to take advantage of this file for when black castles. Notice that if they play c5 now, the question here is, what should we play? Check or Kathrik? Well, obviously we have to play c3, and I'm going to explain why. If we play this check, it doesn't work anymore because this bishop is no longer here where we could do the discovered attacks. Therefore, we have to play c3 so that if they play here, we can have a safe retreat for the bishop. Black can castle. We're going to play knight b2. You know, this is the typical setup we should try to reach in every game when they play in a normal way. Look closely, remember the setup, repeat the video as many times as necessary, and notice that now it's very likely they'll want to bring out this bishop through the SQ, the squares on this side. Therefore, they play b6. What we're going to do here is postpone castling a bit and introduce attack plans. We already know this knight here is so strong. A knight on e5, we're going to try to put it there almost every time. It's going to be a very strong knight. Notice that now if they play a move like bishop b7, a completely normal developing move, we are already implementing a very clear attack plan. And that's why it's so important to have the concepts clear. If we have a clear attack plan, it doesn't matter what the opponent does. We'll know how to adapt. It's important, instead of memorizing moves, to understand the plan. We're going to bring the queen to f3. Bringing a queen into the attack is very important because we're going to see what that queen has to do. A developing move from the opponent could easily be knight bd7, and we're going to bring the queen into the attack. Notice that right now we're threatening with this queen and this bishop a checkmate that, if it weren't for this black knight, we'd deliver checkmate on the next move. Therefore, we already have a plan. Remove this knight from here. If we manage to get this knight to move, we'll deliver checkmate. That's why the plan is so strong. Notice that here, black has multiple options. I'm not saying we're winning, just that we have a plan to stick to. For example, if they attacked us, we move away, whatever. If they come here to prevent us from bringing out this knight to protect this square, to not expel it, we could sacrifice the bishop. Look at what a tremendous attacking position, where we have the bishop and the queen attacking and almost without defense, where we could come with the pawns to attack this knight. We'd have a totally forced position. Almost, because we'd be pressing with many pieces. Notice that if they defend, for example, with this move, we could take advantage of all the dark squares with our dark squared bishop. Notice that also, When they move the rook away, because we're attacking it, we can reinforce this point here, and we'd have a spectacular reinforcement for this knight. The position would be totally winning for us. Let's also see, for example, if here they try to play this move here. Notice that now what they're doing is trying to block this point here, this checkmate point. Simply, what we'd have to do would be to attack this knight with the pawn, and when it moves, no matter where, if they capture it here, we deliver checkmate on the next one. They can also think of one thing. Black, notice that I'm giving you all the options, so that whatever they do to you, you can know how to play. For example, they could think, let's exchange this knight because there are too many pieces on the board. Black might think that by exchanging some of these attacking pieces, this could improve. But notice that after capturing the knight with the pawn, we'd be attacking this knight, the only defender of the checkmate, and it would have to retreat. Notice that if they come here, as we just saw, what we'd have to do is the same as before. It is indeed defended by the bishop and the pawn, but simply by playing f3, wherever they go, it doesn't matter. The only way not to lose the knight is to take here. We deliver checkmate on the next move. Let's see now some very common attack plans in the London system, where we're going to manage to win many games. Knight f6, e3, e6, knight f3. We could say here, for example, bishop e7. We're going to continue with bishop d3, c5. You already know, when they play c5, we'll play c3. Sorry, here they can castle. We'll continue with knight bd2, and here they could continue, for example, with knight c6, a move that until now we hadn't seen, but that is equally very interesting. How are we going to respond here? Well, here, if you've been paying attention to the class so far, you'll have a pretty clear idea of what the attack plan is and how we could start to get into it. We place the knight on e5, a knight on e5, which is a very strong knight. Right now, setting its sights on this knight, but above all, setting its sights on the king side. A super powerful knight. How could black continue? Well, they could continue, for example, with b6. Well, right now, they couldn't continue, for example, with b6. Why? Because the knight would be falling, which makes it quite difficult to bring out this bishop. So black will think, okay, fine, I have to trade this knight. But when they trade this pawn, we'll retake this knight with the pawn. And look how interesting. Right now, we're attacking the knight, the one we said was the only defender of the castled king. And notice that this queen is covering this whole diagonal, so the knight can't come forward. It couldn't come to e4 either. Why? Because it's defended by the bishop and by the knight. Therefore, it couldn't jump forward, so the knight would have to jump back, either here or here. Once it jumps back, we'd have multiple plans of attack. A typical attack plan would be to come with the queen, try to checkmate, but there's still a plan I like more. This plan is to take advantage of not having castled. Sometimes it's great to take advantage of not having castled and play h4. Notice that we're now trying to bring this rook into the attack. Besides, we're supporting this point here, which will be very useful later on. Notice that now it seems like we're not attacking anything, but in fact, we are attacking. We're attacking multiple things. We're attacking a possible bishop sacrifice, entering with the queen, coming with the knight. Let's look at this plan, because it's a totally incredible plan. Let's imagine, for example, that they play c4. Now they're attacking this bishop. Well, here would already be a good time to perform the Greek sacrifice, the typical Greek sacrifice. It's true we could move this bishop away over here, but look, this sacrifice we have here, bishop takes h7 check. Now we're bringing the king here to the side where we want it, and now we'll enter with the queen into the attack. Notice that the only move is to go back this way. And now here we have to think about how to bring our pieces into the attack. Well, we have a very simple plan, which is to come with the knight here and then come here, which seems very slow, but the truth is that for black it's practically impossible to stop. Notice that here you might think of several moves. Escaping with the rook, a checkmate could come quickly, as the knight would jump in through here. The only one that seems to save it is playing f6. We'll see that with f6, we don't care if they protect this square, because we're going to jump in with the knight anyway. Look, we're threatening checkmate on the next move, so they have to capture no matter what. And as we recapture with the pawn, notice that we're entering with the queen and the rook, both on h7 and 8-8, threatening a checkmate. Plus, we have this pawn that can also help us out. Imagine they try to resist here, for example, with rook takes bishop, trying to hold off the checkmate for a bit, because after queen takes here, they could escape. Notice that we have a spectacular continuation. The continuation will be as follows. Instead of playing the queen here, we're going to play it to 8-8. The king would absolutely have to come this way. There's no other way out. And we'll sacrifice this pawn. We'll play g6 check. The king, as you can see, can't go anywhere except to take this pawn here, and by simply placing our queen on h5, we deliver a spectacular checkmate. This king would be trapped right here in the middle of the board. As you can see, this plan is completely effective. If we have a plan in mind, we just have to execute it, and no matter what the opponent does, we're going to stick to the plan, regardless of the moves they make. That's the importance of not just memorizing moves. Let's see, chess teacher, sometimes I play d4, d5, bishop f4, and they play bishop f5 against me. Notice they're mirroring us. When they make this move, we realize something. We can conclude that our opponent doesn't know the theory very well, because this move can be exploited in several ways. And instead of playing lines like e3, knight f3, and following our London system to the letter, I'm proposing new situations. Notice that now this point has been left completely unprotected, the b7 point. So I suggest switching to a Queen's Gambit by playing c4. If you want a more extensive video on the Queen's Gambit, it's actually the video I played yesterday. The video I recorded and uploaded yesterday, which you guys really liked, actually. I'll leave it in the description. Come on, I'll be nice. I'm gonna leave it in the description so you can go watch it without having to search for it. And now let's continue with this plan. Notice that, as we said, we've left this point unprotected. Black can play e6, a perfectly normal move. We'll continue with knight c3, and notice now, what's the idea? Well, to try and bring our queen out here, attacking this point and attacking this point with all pieces at once, and therefore ending up much better off. Notice that here, if they play bishop c5, and we play bishop f5, and we play c4, it's also possible they'll take this pawn. In fact, it's more likely that this happens than the other. In this case, we're going to play e3, a very typical line, when they accept the Queen's Gambit. If you saw yesterday's video, it'll be quite clear to you. And here, just be careful, we're attacking this pawn, so that look, when we take it, we get back the pawn we were down, we've recovered it, and we also have a much superior position. Therefore, many people try to defend this pawn. This in itself is a completely serious mistake. Here, black has already lost the game after the move queen f3. If you saw yesterday's video, there's also the trick of coming through here, and it can't be defended from here or here because they've lost, but here you can just play queen f3. Notice that this rook is completely undefended. They can't play the knight here, as it would fall, and on the next move, the rook would fall too. Therefore, the only move that seems to save the rook is playing c6, and now all we have to do is exchange this knight, bishop for knight, and when they capture with the rook, notice that besides moving the rook, this bishop is left completely undefended, and we can capture it with the queen, leaving us with an extra piece, and on top of that, we're in a completely winning position. I don't know if you knew this, but most people who watch my videos aren't subscribed to the channel. Hey, subscribe to my channel because I work hard on a daily video for you, so you can learn a lot and we can have a great time together. Just kidding. If you don't want to subscribe, obviously, it's absolutely fine. Look here now. When they play this against us, we can calmly play e3, as we've seen so far, and here it's very likely they'll play c5. Why? Well, for the same reason we played it before, c4. They want to bring this queen out here and exploit the weakness left by the bishop moving out. Notice that now we're going to change our plans. Instead of playing a traditional move like playing c3, because we said before that when they play c5, we had to play c3 or bishop here, which they could attack. Instead of doing any of those things, we're going to change the plans a bit and take the opponent out of their comfort zone. We're going to play knight c3. This might seem like a bit of a weak move. Why? Because it's blocking this pawn on the c-file that can't get out. But notice that now, if they don't realize it, this knight is a killer knight. They might think we're just playing this knight, as a developing move. And if they play, for example, queen b6, or even, I don't know, knight c6, let's say they play knight c6, here we'd practically be winning the game. With what move? Well, by placing our knight here, knight b5, we're attacking the entry at c7. Notice we're attacking with both the knight and the bishop. So this entry would be a completely lethal double attack for the opponent. Notice that here there's no other option, it seems, but to give up this pawn and pray. Notice there's no way to stop this bishop and this knight. Whatever they do, we'd come through here. Therefore, they play e5 and try to see what happens. We're simply going to capture here. This knight has to move, for example. If they try to come forward here, we'd still have an even stronger tactical blow that you're going to like a lot. Let's see if you spot it. Queen takes d5, giving away the queen, but giving it away calmly. Why? Because we're convinced we'll get it back after queen takes queen. How cool it is to win a queen! We'd come in with the knight here, and we'd be delivering a triple check. Notice that if they haven't resigned yet, this position will be completely won for us. When they move the king out a check, we'll take the queen. It's so satisfying to take the queen. I love it. And we'd be left in a completely winning position. The opponent can't castle, and we're also up 2 pawns with better development. Before you go, it's important to see this way black plays, because I'm sure you've seen it 1,000 times when they play the King's Indian defense. We'll calmly play our London system, and instead of developing with d5 or e6, they come at you with g6. They're trying to fianchetto their bishop and castle quickly. I'm sure this has been played against you many times. Here, what we're gonna do is also change the plan. Just like before, when they played c5, we also wanted to change the plan. Here, if we play very solidly, we'd be creating a very boring game. What we're gonna do is try to change the plan. And I'll give you 2 recipes. A very solid one for playing against much stronger players, and a very tricky one where 90% of opponents will fall for it, especially in blitz or fast games. Notice that now the opponent wants to bring their bishop out this way. We're going to play our knight over here quickly. Why? Because we want to support the center, we want to take advantage of black not having a pawn on d5, and we want to jump straight in with this pawn to e4 to have a much stronger pawn center. Plus, now we have very good development in the center of the board, supporting both the bishop and the knight. When black plays the move bishop g7, which we've been predicting, and they'll surely play it because that's the point of this plan, we're going to play e4. As we can see, we've already occupied the center of the board with both e4 and d4, and we have our pieces placed very solidly on the board. Notice that if they castle here, they'd be letting us play e4 quite easily, so most players will play d6 first. I'm sure this has been played against you 1,000 times, and you don't know how to counter it strongly. Notice that here I recommend playing queen d2, and after black castles, I recommend castling long. This would be the solid line against strong players. And here the plan would be to push this pawn to infinity and beyond, to create checkmate lines with the rook, then bring the bishop here, try to trade it, and enter with the queen. As I said, this would be the solid plan against superior players, but since I know you all want to see the tricky plan to win lots of games, let's get to it. Let's go! d4, knight f6, bishop f4, g6, knight c3, as we said, bishop g7, e4, taking the center, d6, and here, instead of playing queen e2 as we saw before and castling to attack with all our pieces, even the h-pawn, we have a much more beautiful line, which is playing e5. Notice how we're putting pressure on this knight. And I've checked the database to see which move players made most often here, especially amateurs. And over 90% of people captured this pawn, which is already a pretty serious mistake. Why? Because after the recapture, they're trading queens. That's true. They trade queens. We recapture, importantly, with the rook. We get the, what's it called? I can't even talk. I've been recording for so many minutes I can't speak. Control of the D file. Notice that we're ending up with a very good position. We're attacking this knight, which has to move. The most common thing is for it to go here or here. This looks stronger because they're attacking our bishop. But remember, I told you this line was very tricky, and we had some brutal traps. By playing this little knight here, knight to d5, we've already won the game. We're threatening to break in here inevitably. As you can see, there's no way to stop this fork. How do we stop this? The only way seems to be with this knight. And all we have to do is trade this knight, and then we could enter through here. Many of you will think, well, what I'd do here is trade here and pray that with any luck, white takes here instead of taking here. The thing is, after this capture, we don't just take the rook, we deliver checkmate thanks to our control of this file. Notice the king can't come this way, he has to go here, and by simply placing our rook right here, we'd already be delivering checkmate. I hope you loved this episode on the London system, and that you start playing it. Leave me a like, I've practically lost my voice here explaining this for you. I hope you really enjoyed it. I'll reply to any comments, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.